Okay, so this is about GIFs. So on Thursday, what we're going to be doing is looking at how we make GIFs and make our own instead of just getting them off Giphy or Tenor or wherever it is we're getting them, or Reddit. Okay, so this is about why, when, why, when, and where. The how bit is going to be Thursday's session. Okay. So a tiny little bit of history to start with. So this is 1987. In fact, this is a little bit earlier than 1987. This is a program called Mac Paint. It was one of the first. It was before Photoshop was even around, before Photoshop 1, and it was the sort of the default drawing and painting package on the black and white Mac. Now, it literally was black and white. You can see there's no grayscale there. It's just black and white. So they faked tone by distribution of the dots. If you look at, interesting, by the way, to look at the tools, you'll notice that this is Mac Paint. The lasso is there. The hand is there. The paint bucket is there. There's an interesting one there, the spray can, and the spray can no longer exists in Photoshop, but lots of those are actually the icons that you use now in Photoshop. But this is Mac Paint, and I think originally this is about 1984, 1985, but we'll talk about 1987 in a second. So this again is Mac Paint, so you can see it's literally just black and white, and tone was created by distributing dots. This was 1-bit computing, so that every pixel could only be on or off. There was no color, there was no grayscale, it was just black and white. So I've got a couple of links here. I'll just show you because it was quite interesting when I was going through it. So this is the Mac operating system from 1984. I'm just going to scroll through. So this is what it looked like in 1984. Okay, so you can see just black and white. The grey here is not really grey at all. It's just dots of black and white like I just showed you. Here's the start of, this is 1984 still. 1984, this is the control panel with volume and day and date. Okay, sorry Assist America. Moving on to 1984, this is very early games. You can see it's literally black and white. This is trying to make a game with black and white. Okay. Then System 3, still black and white. Okay, so this is 1986. Still black and white. Okay, really quite sophisticated black and white in a way to get this level of sort of tone. 1987. Okay, so you can see that in 1987 the Mac was still completely black and white. Okay, no color at all. And you can see bit by bit it got a little bit more sophisticated as it went. 1991, colour hit the Mac, but it was 16 colours. Okay, I think it was 16. It may have been more. I may be telling a lie on that. But here's the start of colour. 1994, just bit by bit it got more. But you can see 1987 was a long time back. Okay, if we just head back to we'll do the same thing for this one is Windows. Okay, so 1985, the PC had colour right from the start, but it was eight colours, I seem to remember. This is how attractive Windows was. This is Windows 1, 1985. Okay, if we get to about 1987, this is 1987. Okay, so very crude. Colour was barely there at all, and it was only you can see still barely there at all. Windows 3 started to get a bit more sophisticated, 1990. Okay, and as you go on, so you're familiar with that. That's just setting the scene in terms of the history. So there was file formats didn't really support colour until at least 1987. Now, one of the big players in, I'm not going to call it the internet because it wasn't really the internet at that time, but online services was a company called CompuServe. And they really wanted to future-proof their file system so they could deliver colour and more than just black and white and more than just simple colour. And in June 1987, somebody called Steve Wilhite, and we'll come back to him in a second, he developed this thing called graphic interchange format. And really what it was trying to address was, at a time when colours, at the most computers were displaying was 16 colours, they wanted to come out with a file format that could support so many colours, more colours than we could ever want. And that was graphic interchange format, which is GIF, okay? And it was all about colour and the brave new world and trying to guess what we would need in the future. Now, the history of computing and technology has been littered with these ideas about we're going to design a format that's so far advanced that we'll never surpass it. So as an example, this is Thomas Watson. Some people claim it's not true that he never said this, but this we're going to go with it. Head of IBM, Thomas Watson, 1943. He famously said that the world may need as many as 5 computers. Okay, that's what he thought the world at the outside needed 5 computers. They were looking at big mainframes, so enormous computers, and what you did was you just had like a terminal that you connected to. But they believed that at one point in the future they may need as many as 5 computers, which looks a bit funny now. And that's only, well, that's 43 would be 77 years ago. Okay. The first Mac had the memory soldered in at 128K. You couldn't update it, you couldn't upgrade it, you couldn't put any more in. Now, just for reference, 128K, there's 1000K in a megabyte and 1000 megabytes in a gigabyte. Now, my computer has got 64 gig, so you can see 128K is tiny, tiny. Okay, and this was what Steve Jobs famously said. He said that 128K was more than anybody will ever need, and that's why they soldered it in and didn't allow it to be upgradable. So history has been littered with that, and this is another example. This is so on the left-hand side, in 1958, the Postmaster General of the government decided that the area code for the phone system for London would be 01. Okay, and then in 1990, which I remember only too well, before your time, but the code was split. So it used to be, I remember it being 01, and then it was split to be 071 for inner London and 081 for outer London. They thought that would be more than we could possibly need. Then in 1995, all other phone STD codes outside London added an extra 1 to give it a whole extra level of numbers. Then in 2000, which is only 10 years later, all the phone numbers in London changed again and became 0207 instead of 0171 and 0208 rather than 0181. And only 5 years later, there was an 023 released to release more numbers in London. So now there is an 0207, 0208 and 0203. And 2019 there was an 0204. So the future proofing, the future guessing was never really future proof enough, which is why GIF is an interesting technology, because it was centered around at the time what was called 8-bit computing. 8-bit, think of a bit as being a switch, and we'll talk about a bit about binary at some point as well. But this is what 8-bit computing. 8-bit computing meant you could only have 255 numbers. 8 switches in binary allow you to count up to 256. It's only up to 255 if you include the naught, but it's 256 possibilities. So these early computer games only supported 256 colours. Okay, so 8-bit, 8 switches, and in binary what that meant was 256 colours maximum. Now, if we go have a look at CompuServe, this is what the internet used to look like. On the far left, you would log on to CompuServe, and you'd get that modem that went, you know, I'm sure you know that noise. I hope you don't. I've done that noise, and you're just going to have to deal with it now, okay? But CompuServe, this is what it looked like. And what you would do is you'd log on, you'd get that window on the left, and you'd select whether or not you wanted Microsoft or Sega or Sunsight. And the middle image, you can see about the internet, about internet mail. Now, interesting, this is 1987, and it wasn't even called email at that point. This was CompuServe. It was called Internet Mail. There were about 4 or 5 computer companies that provided online services like this. Okay, but you can see there's no browser. You don't log in and search for things. Even on the right, by the time you started to get colour, if you have a look, you've got things like you log on, it would say connected, and then you could go to professional, travel, entertainment, home and leisure. So it's not the internet that we know of now. It's a different way of connecting. But this is CompuServe, and they were one of the big companies at the time. I'd say there were about 4 or 5 others, and we'll come to at least one of them in a second. So CompuServe, they were the big one. There was another one called America Online, which AOL, I'm sure you've heard of AOL. CompuServe eventually were bought out by AOL. AOL developed a browser. CompuServe had a browser that was called Netscape, and that was developed by a group that they set up called Mozilla. Now, Mozilla, you may know now for the browser Firefox, but Netscape and Firefox grew out of the same thing, all originally from CompuServe. AOL then sold CompuServe to Time Warner, as in Warner Brothers and Time Magazine. Okay, and then Time Warner were then eventually bought by Verizon. So you can see historically, you can trace it all the way back to a lot of through quite a lot of history. And CompuServe were the company with that Steve Wilhite who developed the GIF. Okay, so a bit of technical detail about the GIF. There was no JPEG. At that time, there were no photos. JPEG was a format that wasn't developed until 1992, so 5 years later. So there was no colour, there was just black and white, and then the GIF came along, which had this amazing ability to support 256 colours. Okay, so colour 8 bits equals 256 colours. That's what it could support. And at the time, if computers could only display 16, 256 seemed like the future. It seemed so far ahead of its time that it seemed great. The other thing that was interesting about it is that one colour from that 256 could be transparent. Now, the advantage of that is that if you had a red background and you wanted to put a white circle on it, previously what you'd have to do is you'd have to make a red rectangle the same colour as the background and then put the white onto it. But here you were able to make some of it transparent, which means it could float on top of the background. I hope that makes sense. It's a bit like layers in Photoshop, but only one colour, and it could only be completely transparent. It couldn't be a bit transparent. It was either transparent or it wasn't. Okay, so one of the 256 could be transparent. The key thing is that animation was included in the spec for the GIF. So what that meant was that you could display a series of still images one after the other and create the illusion of animation. But really, the bottom line is that it was just an extra that was added in because they realised they could. The other thing that was about it was no sound. GIFs don't support sound at all. Remember, this is 1987. The whole idea of displaying video online with sound was so ridiculous that there was no even thought about it. So pre-JPEG, very forward thinking at the time, 256 colours, one colour could be transparent, animation was included, but there was no sound. Okay. Now there are a couple of things about GIFs that I'll just play this. So I'm sure you've seen this debate about GIF and how you pronounce it. Rather than me just go through the thing myself, I've just got a really good video. It's about 3 or 4 minutes long, so fingers crossed it plays and fingers crossed the sound works. If the sound is mucking up again, type it in the chat. Okay, so I'll just play this and I'll come back at the end.
I thought this debate was settled. I thought that GIF with a hard G had won. But apparently not. It is more popular than GIF, but it's not a landslide. In a 2014 survey, only 70% of people said GIF. And the format's creator, Steve Wilhite, argues that it should be GIF and has been arguing that for a long time. In fact, when the Webby Awards let him give one of their famous 5-words-only acceptance speeches, he said, "It's pronounced GIF, not GIF." This is the slide he put up with that, and yeah, you can see the problem there. Now, one of the most fundamental principles of modern linguistics is descriptivism. There should be no value judgment about particular words or pronunciations or types of speech. There must be no correct way to speak handed down from on high. We describe how people speak. If language changes, we change with it. So the Oxford English Dictionary accepts both pronunciations, despite Steve Wilhite calling them wrong, end of story. Turns out, even if you invented a word, you don't get to make the call on how it's pronounced. Whether he likes it or not, GIF is the more common pronunciation. That said, linguistics also gives us the tools to look at all the other words in English and figure out, well, okay, we've got this new word. What other words is it most like? You might hear the argument that GIF is short for Graphics Interchange Format. Graphics, not graphics, but that's not how English treats acronyms. In JPEG, the P isn't short for photography. And in the same way, laser isn't pronounced laser, and scuba isn't scuba. So rather than acronyms, what about other English words? Well, in the red corner, git, gift, gaffer. In the blue corner, gin, gist, gel. Okay, so if you went through the whole dictionary, which side would have more words? Well, in 2015, a researcher called Michael Dow did just that, only counting the words that have one morpheme. So words like gift, you can't break that down to smaller lexical parts. Gifted wouldn't count. You can break that down to gift and ed. So just using those really basic words, it's a victory for the GIFers. There are more words where GI is pronounced J than G. But the G words are used more often, so the likelihood of each pronunciation is about equal. But if you only look at words that start with GI, G is more common. So now we're on a question of psycholinguistics. When we read a new word, do we consider all the times we've seen those letters before anywhere, or do we favour ones that are in the same position? And even if we do, why do we pick one over the other? Unless you're very young, GIF is a word that you almost certainly read before you heard. And the first time you ever saw those three letters, your brain instantly tried to match them to patterns you already knew. Jib, gift, gin, git, give. Maybe Jill or Gill, both of which are valid English words. One's an old measurement, one's a part of a fish. Gillingham or Gillingham, both English towns, a couple of 100 miles apart. In a split second, your brain went through everything that it knew about G-I, decided which pronunciation you thought was right, and then locked that in your head. The correct answer is, of course,
okay, for me, it's definitely GIF. I don't know about all of you. I think perhaps we should have a vote on that, whether or not it's GIF, whether it's a J or a G. But I'm sticking with GIF, okay? Even though Steve Wilhite, who invented the format, insists it's GIF. GIF, as far as I'm concerned, is a lemon-scented cleaning fluid. But anyway, just watching that, it also reminded me of something else, which I just want to show you anyway. It's just about pronunciation. It makes me laugh every time I watch it. So just bear with me. This is it's called the Pronunciation Manual. It's on YouTube, and it's just somebody sort of teaching people English, but teaching them a bit wrong. Okay, so let's just find some. We'll avoid the sex words area, but let's just see how he suggests.
I didn't even know I needed this thing. But now I can't stop playing with my vagina spidoddle. Vagina spidoddle. Vagina.
So I'll just play you one more. Let's just find some. Let's find Manny Pacquiao.
Mondo Pacquiao. Mondo? A Pacquiao.
It makes me. It may not make you laugh at all, but it makes me laugh every time.
Gargle. Gargle.
Anyway, enough of that. Right, okay. You probably think, what on earth are you doing, Mark? Okay, right. Okay, so let's just click on. So, the point about a GIF, and it's definitely GIF, is that it's a still format. In spite of the fact that you know it as something that people use for animation, the reality is that it's actually a still format. It's designed for stills, its strength is stills, its whole setup is actually as a still image. As an example, obviously a GIF really is designed for screen. That's the other thing to say about it. It's designed for screen, not for print. And if it's designed for screen, particularly we're thinking about the web, this is how I'll show you the code now that you use to embed a JPEG onto a web page. We will be doing some of this, but literally you write image source, and then you say where the image is, and in this case it's just in the folder. So you would literally in speech marks write mypic.jpg. So that's the way you embed a JPEG onto a web page. This is the way you embed a GIF onto a JPEG, onto a web page. You literally write image source and then the name of the file. So you can see that in actual fact it's exactly the same. When people talk about GIFs, they talk about animation, they talk about video, and they get confused between a video and a GIF. This is how you embed a video onto a web page. You can see it's a completely different thing altogether. Video, width, controls, autoplay, source. You have to put it in twice for different sorts of browser, and close with. It's much more complicated. Okay, so this is, for me, is evidence really that a GIF is absolutely designed as a still image. Okay, so I definitely don't want you to use it for animation. So I do want to use it for animation, but a very specific sort. People will say, okay, I want to make it move. I want to make something animated. And there are way, 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 way better ways to animate things. You shouldn't be using a file format from 1987 that animation was an add-on to it. There are reasons why you would use a GIF at various times, but this is the main reason why you shouldn't. I'll just show you this now. So there's a video of me jumping out of a box, and Joe Tidy, who you've not met in the background, absolutely wetting herself. Anyway, this is a GIF. It's very short. I've just played it forwards and backwards, then it's looping. And then on the right, you can see how big this is. So you can see it's 20 megabytes. So this is a GIF that was generated on my phone, and it just lives as a file on my phone. But if you wanted to embed that in a web page, it's 20 meg, okay, which is at least 4 times what I would recommend. Okay, and you can see it's very short. It's only just a few seconds long. And people will say, I want to do an animation that's 2 minutes long, and they think, because they know how to make a GIF, and I'll show you on Thursday that it's quite easy to make GIFs. They think that that's the way to do it, but a 2-minute version of this would be hundreds and hundreds of megs, and yet GIFs are designed to be delivered online. So if you put this on a web page, it would kill everybody's data. It would be really slow to download. There are much better ways to produce motion if you want genuine motion. Obviously there's no sound on this either, so this is why you should only think about it in very specific places. So small, short little things on the web is the way to think about it. Just have a quick look at a GIF and sort of usage stats. How much are GIFs used? It's quite interesting. So we think about GIFs as being very, very common, and they are very common. I suspect that they're more likely found on apps on phones, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You're more likely to find there. And these statistics that I'm going to pull up now, they're actually web statistics rather than things on apps. But let's just have a look. So this site here, they provide graphs of usage. So this is usage stats for of GIFs for websites. Okay, percentage of websites using GIFs. So you can see, in actual fact, it's very, very slightly going down. But a quarter of all websites in November 19 used GIFs on their site. 22% November 1st of November, as in a few days ago. So this is usage. About 25% of all websites. GIF is used by 21.8% of all websites. This is also an interesting graph. It talks about GIF market position. So these are low traffic sites, high traffic sites. So things like BBC, YouTube, all that. Then this is used by fewer sites, many sites. And you can see that GIF is very much in the middle. PNG and JPEG together SVG we won't really touch, but let's just also one more thing. Usage trends. So here you can see the GIF is this pink line here. So it's fairly sort of static. The two at the top are used on, what's the usage of file format? Yeah, so this is usage on websites. You can see that the two that are used predominantly are red, which is PNG, and blue, which is JPEG. Of course, neither of which support animation. Not true, actually. PNGs do support animation, but it's very rarely used. These ones down here, this is the top of the animation ones. But again, you see that trend going down, SVG very slightly going up, okay? Let's just head back. So it's used a lot, but it's not the most common format by any means. In terms of the sort of relevance now, there are some key parts where you see GIFs, and I think its relevance now is entirely due to social media. It's used on GIFs. It's when we're when we're on WhatsApp. You do search on Giphy for a funny cat video or a funny Donald Trump little animation to put on, and this is where its real strength is at the moment. And the other thing, the reason I think it's used is that file sizes can be really small. They're really easy to embed. You don't need all of that video back-end stuff to make it work. It's just a still image that also supports. But there's also something about the sort of inherent amateurishness. The fact that it's 8-bit, it's 256 colours. It hasn't got the millions of colours that computers support now and our eyes can see. There's a certain sort of dirty amateurishness to it, which I think is quite attractive. And they can be quite edgy because of that. And there's sort of imperfection. And this goes back to our previous talk about retro, about a desire to have things which are not completely perfect. Now, I've got a very short video. The full video is about 20 minutes. I'm just going to play about 3 minutes of it. And this is a photographer called James Popsis. Really interesting guy, worth looking at his Instagram and his YouTube channel for interesting ideas. But this is just him talking about perfection. He's talking about it in terms of photographs, but I think you should take the same arguments through to design and everything to do with graphics, really. So I'll just play this video.
Right, you may remember in last week's video that I spoke mostly about this photo. And if you haven't seen that video, please go and check it out, and also subscribe maybe if you haven't already. But when I posted that video both on YouTube and Instagram, I saw lots of comments on both platforms that spoke about the rope that's in the photo just to the right hand side. And lots of people were suggesting that they think I should have got rid of the rope. And today I thought I'd talk a little bit about why I didn't. And also I thought I'd try and get some photos in my new local woods. Although, as I mentioned last week, I'm the furthest thing from a woodland photographer. So actually I guess that would be like a desert photographer, and I'm not that either. So also, actually, while I was in Scotland a few weeks back, I mentioned that on a bright sunny day, one of the last places you should go is the woods or a forest or something, because you really can't control the shadows in a place like this. But here I am. It is a lockdown, so I am limited by where I can go. Anyway, this photo, there's a bit of a chase going on between a greyhound and a pug. I wonder who's going to win that one. Now the reason I didn't get rid of the rope in that photo is exactly the same reason I didn't center the laptops in this photo. It's the same reason I didn't get rid of the cars in this photo, the people in this photo, and it's the same reason I didn't get rid of all the boys, or buoys if you're American, in this photo. And it's a reason that's kind of reappeared in my consciousness over the last few weeks since Emily and I have begun furniture shopping for the new house, which I know sounds completely random. I will try and explain. Basically, if you've done any furniture shopping of late, particularly wood, you might have noticed that there's a trend, a massive trend in popularity for reclaimed wood. Basically wood that's had a previous life. It's been used for other stuff. It might be scratched, scuffed, cracked. It's just used, and people will pay more for it than brand new stuff. I can't really figure out why, but I think it's pretty much the same reason that cookbooks 20 years ago had perfectly, manicured's not the right word, perfectly kept photos of their dishes. Whereas now in food photography, there'll be crumbs everywhere, the pies will be asymmetrical and all homemade looking. There'll be more of a sprinkle of that approach as opposed to half a teaspoon of this. And basically, I think all of that is a culmination of people wanting a bit of character and a bit of imperfection from their stuff versus what they used to want, which I think was perfection. And I think, I mean, I'm not a social scientist, but I think that's because of advertising in large part. We have been sold perfection so much that now we want something that's not perfect. We want a bit of personality. And broadly speaking, that's the exact reason that I try and moderate my use of the clone stamp tool. Because when you're a photographer and you use software, you have the chance to remove anything that you might consider distracting from your photo. And if you use it too much, I think you can get rid of some of that personality. Now, if you're anything like me, when it comes to advertising, you switch off immediately anytime you see a print car advert that's just a photo of a pristine car, even though it's driving through mud. Or if you see an ad of a tourist destination that you know is busy and yet there are no tourists there.
Okay, I hope you got the sense of that. The idea that people are fed up with perfection. He particularly blamed advertising, but I think that there's a whole backlash against perfection on Instagram. There's a whole backlash against perfection in publishing. The idea of models being photoshopped and airbrushed. And I think that desire for something that is a bit more real, if you like, is central to why people like GIFs. It's that imperfection and the sort of dirtiness of it that is worth hanging on to and considering and using. I do just want to... Oh, that's not what I expected. Oh, sorry, GIFs and memes. People talk about GIFs and sometimes they don't mean GIFs at all. GIF is literally a file format and they get mixed up with memes and they talk about I've got a great GIF and what they mean is they've got a meme and things get confused. So I just want to quickly show you this. So for instance, this site here, these are obviously all these are memes. Some of them might well be GIFs as well. Some of them might well be animated. So for instance, here is a GIF that's sort of featured, that is a meme as well, but there is a difference, okay? So I'm not talking about memes, I'm talking about GIFs, okay? So just make sure you understand the difference, that there is a difference. I do also want to show you this. Perhaps I shouldn't be showing you this. Anyway, this is Instagram, and it's UWL memes, okay? So let's just have a look. So... I'm going to be getting them some free followers here, unless you're all following it anyway. But obviously the staff will enjoy this hugely as well. But so these are the mini heart attack when you can't find these in your pocket: phone, wallet, keys, ID card. Okay. What else have we got? We've got England to enter month-long second coronavirus announcements. UWL is open. Okay. So UWL memes. Okay. BBC Sky News, Paragon Student Let's, Movember Foundation, makes a Halloween Zoom calls, and okay, these are memes. These are not GIFs. And people will say, I've got a great GIF for you, but they mean something different. Now, sometimes these are animated, and sometimes they will be GIFs as well. Okay. Anyway, so that's where I just wanted to get to. So do sign up, UWL memes, and let them know I sent you, okay? Let's just go back to there. The other thing about GIFs is I do think that they have a slightly challenging thing, and that UWL memes was an example that GIFs are available to everybody to do. And when I was growing up, the thing that allowed us to do that was punk. So this is 1976, Sex Pistols, and they couldn't sing, they couldn't play their instruments, but they found a platform, and I think GIFs perform a similar function now. So it's a sort of interesting area. So in terms of GIFs, just quickly show you some sites. And big one, obviously, because it's on the phone. I assume it's on Android as well, but certainly within, if you're on the iPhone, I think it's within WhatsApp. It would be with WhatsApp. I'll explain why in a second. Giphy. Now, if you know Giphy, Giphy is this. It's a library, and if you searched for what should we do? Table tennis, something neutral. Okay, so if you search for table tennis, you can get your GIFs. Then you stick it in your social media post, you stick it in your message, you stick it in your WhatsApp group, and you've got it instantly. Now, Giphy is an enormous company. They were launched on the stock market, I think, in 2013, and they are a multi-billion dollar company. So much so that they were bought by Facebook. Okay. So when you're using Giphy, you're actually using a Facebook thing. So hence the link with WhatsApp, which is also owned by Facebook. And oops, just head back to here. So Giphy. So I just want to talk quickly about Facebook. So ask yourself who's paying for Facebook. Usually the people who are paying are the customers. So advertisers are the ones who are paying on Facebook. If you don't know who the customer of the product you're using is, you don't know what the product for. We're not the customers of Facebook, we are the product. Facebook is selling us to advertisers. So this is an author, interesting man called Douglas Rushkoff in 2011, and it's this bit of it that I just want to point you at. As soon as something's free, you're not buying a service. If you're getting something for free, the chances are that you're the product. So every time you use Giphy, Facebook are saying, this person used this, and they're building up data which they then sell to advertisers. So while I think there is a counterculture aspect to GIFs, I think there is also a big capitalism, Facebook, big data aspect to it too. And this is true of a few of these. If we just have a look at these, the couple of things I want to show you on this. So this is GIF bin. Now, in here, it's always a sort of a giveaway. If I want to download this, I don't want to use their code, because their code will trigger being tracked. Okay, so that's how they're tracking you, using this code. So normally what I do with an image, I can just drag it to the desktop. I can't do that here. I can also go in here and go select all, copy. Then if I paste it up here, I can see that in actual fact it's linking to the GIF that is here. So I'll just get rid of this. Now this should be that GIF. It actually says GIF on there, but when you hit return and you think, okay, so here it is, I'll drag this, you can't drag this either, and you'll see it's added a V onto the end, so it's no longer a GIF. So they're protecting it so that the only way you can use these products is by embedding using their code, which is how things are being tracked. Now you might find this to be the case with lots of them. I find it with Giphy, although I noticed a couple of you did send me Giphy GIFs that just as the GIF, which is I was interested to see. If we have a look at Tenor, similar thing. If you pick, say, this one, interesting, you have to sign in, but can I drag that? Yeah, that one. These are off Tenor. I can actually download these. Okay, so Tenor I would use ahead of Giphy or the GIF bin, which is the one I just showed you. But it's interesting which ones you can save from and which ones you can't. This is reaction GIFs. So let's just. I'm feeling bored because Mark's been going on too long. So here's the bored ones, and again, can you drag it? This one you can. Okay, so this is much more in line with that. Obviously, here's the short link, so you can actually put it in. But they're funding themselves with ads. Okay, but at least it's not you being tracked when you use it, unless you use their code. If we head back to one Reddit, obviously Reddit is very counterculture, and these ones will all be. These ones will. these ones will certainly be free, but what you'll notice is that despite this being a page which says GIFs, these are not GIFs. These are actual video. Okay, you can see that this is video, not a GIF at all. It's a funny one if you haven't seen this. These are not all GIFs. Some of them are video. Okay, so again, mixing up video and GIFs is quite a common thing. Let's just go to the next page. And you can have a look through these. I'm not going to go on to that. There's also questions about legality. People are quite often lifting bits of videos, and there is a big debate about whether or not something's legal to actually use people's faces, and whether or not it's safe for advertisers or designers to use material and make GIFs from it. It's a very grey area whether or not you're allowed to. So on Thursday, what we're going to do is we're going to look at creating our own, both using web services, which will give you good results, but perhaps not as much flexibility. But I also want us to go through the process of using Photoshop to make them too. So that's the plan for Thursday. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. I just want to quickly show this is from 2017, but you'll probably recognize these. This was an article from BuzzFeed 2017 about the 100 best GIFs of all time. But bear in mind, this is 3 years ago. But we'll just go through and see how many of them you know. I'd never seen these. Very good though. But these are GIFs. Interesting, they're linking to YouTube, which suggests it's not a GIF at all, but I can see this is a GIF. I hadn't spotted, I didn't recognize any of these. I like this one. So none of these I'd recognize. I think maybe I'd seen this one. Okay, let's carry on down. I've seen this one, this poor girl. You have honestly no idea how you got here. This one, Christian, you gave us this one as one of the examples, so interesting. Okay, when everything's garbage, so you just become king of the garbage. Very used heavily. I'm sure you've seen this one as well. The crying, mind blown. Obviously, loads and loads. Interesting going through these, how many of them involve animals. So this is the cat typing, got the dog typing, we've got this very familiar. The Simpsons disappearing into the hedge. This one has been used a lot just recently. This is fine. You're actually having a horrid nightmare hellscape from which you cannot escape. I think it taps into current situation. Okay, very well-known one. The shocked. I don't know what this is. What sort of animal that is. There's a few more down here that people have included. This crossing over into meme territory. We've got another one that I believe. This one also very familiar. I'm trying to find another one that Christian sent in. Again, you've seen this one around. Where are we? Where are we? More cats. Lots and lots of cats. People falling over. Let's get to the... Where is it? Okay, I'm sure you recognise some of these as I'm skipping through. I can't seem to find the one, which was the Nyan cat. Okay, so lots of good examples there. Again, if we just try pulling it off, BuzzFeed won't allow you. And in actual fact, I believe that, yeah, you can't do it. They're protected. So they're stopping you from doing it. Okay, which is interesting for something which is apparently sort of counterculture. They want you to use their links, which allow them to track you, which is data that they can sell. Okay, let's just quickly head back to here. So your GIFs. Now I'm just going to come out of that. So that's the end of the presentation. Now I'm just going to look at the ones. We're going to look at the ones together that you sent in. did the sound work? Type, let me know. Please tell me it worked. Please tell me you can still hear me. Let me know. Type. Yes. Right, good. Okay, so let's just have a look. Great, thank you. So the ones that you've sent in, okay, these are the ones that I've got as of today. Okay, so I've looked at, so we've got, let's just have a look at eager. I'd be interested to know why some of these I've not seen. I don't know whether they're, I mean, definitely funny. Lots of to do with funny. They're not necessarily to do with the ones you've sent in tend to be funny ones. This one, let's just skip down. Got Michael's. Got Ricky Gervais. Let's just have a look at this one actually, just quickly. If I double click it, you can see when I open it in preview on the Mac, you can see it literally as a sequence of still images. We've got 20. And if you look here, you can see the 256 colors. You can see it breaking down, and you can see it's not meant to be displayed that size. This is the size it's meant to be displayed. Let's just have a quick look at file sizes. Okay, so let's have a look at these. So Sandile, sorry, I'll get it right in the end. Your ones, they're very small, but interesting, you've sent me movies, okay? These are not GIFs, they're video. Okay, they definitely fit into that kind of, I mean, this one, it looks like it should be a GIF, but it's not, it's actually a video. Okay, so you've sent me MP4s, which are great, but they're not GIFs, okay? So these ones, Michael's GIFs, Michael GIF. This one, very well known. Nice one, Savannah. Very good. Oh, dismiss. What time is it? Oh my goodness, right, okay. I like this one a lot, but you can really see the character of it. Hopefully you can see what I mean about them being slightly dirty. You can see the quality of the file format's not particularly good. Rochelle. Some are better than others. This one looks really good. You don't get that banding that you had on this one. Okay, but lots of... Now this is the first one that's not designed to be funny. Okay, so all of the rest have been meant to be funny. They're all funny things, make people smile, make them laugh. But GIFs can also be used for this sort of approach. More funny, more animals. Got the token Rihanna video. Just so you know, this is the biggest one, and it's not that one was the biggest one. Savannah's one of the of Kermit, but you can see this is 4 meg. Savannah's one was 8 meg. This is quite big and good quality. You don't notice this being, you don't notice the banding in quite the same way. This is 4 meg. Do you remember the one of me jumping out the box? 20 meg. Okay, so I would recommend GIFs need to be under about 5 meg. Okay. Thank you, Christian. Here we go. Again, there's this sort of amateurish, not caring aspect to it. It's flies in the face of sort of good taste and everything. And these are the things that I think GIFs are good at. Here's the one that Christian sent in. I like this one, but they're funny. Okay, GIFs are not always funny. Here's the Nyan cat. Get ready for that tomorrow, I guess. Is it tomorrow or is it today? I'm not sure. Again, a comedy sketch, Saturday Night Live. Okay. Okay, so these are really useful to look at because I think they're good references for file size, how big they are, how big in terms of pixels they are, but also in terms of how many frames they are. So for instance, if you have a look at the Rihanna one is how many frames? 25 frames. Okay, so it's just 25 frames. And interesting that they've managed to make it loop just about. Have they managed to make it loop? Not quite. But it's not a problem, it going like that. Okay, so 25 frames. Let's have a look at the waterfall one. It's 1.2 meg, so it's tiny. And it's 9 frames. Okay. People will often say, I'm going to make an animation, and they use GIF format, and it'll be 1,000 frames. Wrong way to do it. 1,000 frames should be a video, okay? I think that is probably it, because I've got 2 minutes left. Let me just unshare my screen and see how many of you are still there. Oh, you're all still there. Great. Hope that wasn't too dull and too boring. Have you any questions about GIFs? Anything you want to any things you want to say? Any things you want to add to the stuff that I've been talking about? If no, just say no, that's fine. I'm fine with that. This was to give you a background. Otherwise, I would have done this in the lesson on Thursday, just to give you a bit of background. It does mean that on Thursday, we can just dive straight in and start making, okay? Hope that's okay. What would be useful for me if on Thursday, if you did have some examples of GIFs, but also if you can find little bits of video, favourites, favourite scenes from movies. Maybe you've downloaded bits from YouTube. If you, especially as well, if you can get some famous dance routines like the Childish Gambino from This Is America. That you could do the Michael Jackson white glove bit. Any bits of video, because we're going to sort of use those as the basis to make some GIFs. But that's it for today. Hope that was fun, and I'm pleased that everything worked. So that's it, and see you Thursday now.